Hey everyone, welcome back to the Radical Care for Christian Counselors podcast. If we haven't met, hi, my name is Bethany Boring. I am the main speaker here for this podcast, but I also own Step Out and Thrive, which actually sponsors this podcast. And who's this for? Who is this for? Well, it is for anyone, including Christian counselors, mental health professionals, pastoral care leaders, but really anyone who feels overwhelmed and isolated and whatever they're doing, whatever God's calling them to do. And if you can imagine, what would it look like to be part of a really deep transformational community where you could come week after week after week and be seen, soothed, safe, and secure, where you could share what's going on and not feel like you have to be fixed. But you could also sit with other people who are going through life, who have practiced the same rhythms of community back and forth week after week, and you can go deeper with one another. You can use it in both a peer-to-peer format, but you can also use it in your counseling groups, in your coaching groups, in your churches, around the dinner table with your kids. You can use it in so many different ways. And that's what we do here at the Radical Care for Christian Counselors. We present different ways of really doing deep community, but we practice care, which is community, application, resources, and encouragement. If you would like to know a little deeper, you can check out bethanyboring.com. It has community information in there, how you can get connected with other people and upcoming groups if you'd like to be a part of that. Now, with all of that out of the way, today we're talking about interactive appreciation. Now, if you've been following the podcast through the summer, our goal was to really introduce two key practices that I pretty much do in all of my groups. And I do it with my kids, I do it in my quiet time. Like, these two really help me get through some of the hardest times in my life, especially the last couple of years. So that's why I love spending the summer on this. And I'm inviting you on the journey. And it's been amazing to see some of the stories and just some of the connections that are happening. With that being said, the last couple weeks we've been dedicating towards Emmanuel journaling. Now, there is a crossover because some of you guys are like, wait, interactive appreciation, haven't that been kind of what we've been doing? And all of that to answer, yes. Interactive appreciation can look in so many different ways. However, these are the two ways of actually doing it in a proactive way. Meaning, Emmanuel journaling is something you can do on your own. You do not really have to connect with anyone in order to do that. You need to make sure that your relational circuits are on. You have no idea what I'm talking about. Go back a couple episodes. It's in there. And you also are aware of, okay, what part of my brain am I using? You have that awareness and you can sit with God and you can allow him to bring an appreciation moment up to you, and you can write, and then you can also spend time right there in that moment hearing back from God about this amazing moment that you had. Interactive appreciation, especially the stories, are things that I introduce on a call or sometimes in a group or even around the dinner table with my kids. Hey, can you guys connect with God about a moment, maybe within your last week, within your last 2 weeks, where you just got to experience God in an amazing way? And with my kids, I'm like, keeping in mind, it could be simple as playing some Roblox with a friend, or laughing at a funny joke, or, looking your teacher in the eye and smiling. Maybe you got to do lunch with a kid, and maybe you got to make a new friend. It can be as simple as that, or it can be as amazing as, like, when you're reading the Bible, like God showed something to you that connected a lot of things together, and maybe it changed everything. Whatever that is, whatever that looks like. And there we go. I just want to make sure my microphone is on. Sorry. It is. Yay, we're good to go. That's how I present it for kids. For adults, I do, hey, ask God to bring to your mind a memory within the last week, within the last 2 weeks. We always start at the last week or 2 weeks when we're first starting, because that's easier for the brain to grapple with, and it keeps us out of, because a lot of our pasts include a lot of trauma. So if we don't have experience with that, and especially if we don't feel safe in that, we always start in the last week or 2 weeks. And so everybody's at different ways of processing all this. So in a group setting, when we're doing interactive appreciation stories and with adults, I'll go, hey, can you ask God to bring to mind a moment within the last week, within the last 2 weeks, where you just got to enjoy his pleasure in you? Meaning, you got to experience his joy. It could be as easy as being outside and letting the sun hit your skin. and what that might have felt like. Or maybe it was enjoying a time or walk in nature. Maybe it was looking a friend in the eye. Maybe it was a great talk that you had with one of your kids. Maybe it was playing with your puppy out in the backyard. Maybe it was reading a book. So you can bring some ideas, but that helps everybody realize this does not have to be an earth shattering when Jesus is being baptized, seeing the light, come from seeing God's voice boom from the clouds. I mean, that's not everybody's normal experience. Like, that's above and beyond, like, amazing. But oftentimes God speaks to us through the everyday. And a lot of times we don't recognize it at the moment. So that's why this practice is so important. So with this interactive appreciation, there's two parts, especially these stories that we're sharing. So you got Emmanuel journaling, that was two parts. You got this is the two parts. Now this is more interactive, meaning you're not just interacting with God, but you're interacting with others. So this is a great practice to bring into a group setting, which whether it's sitting with your kids, I do this all the time, but sitting with my kids at the kitchen table or with a classroom full of kids, or getting ready to start a counseling group session, or getting ready to start a Bible study, whatever. This works a lot better with smaller groups. There is ways to do this with bigger groups as well. And I'll get into that more next week when we talk about how we share. But this week, we're really talking about how to help guide people through this experience. And what we're going to do is this week, we're going to talk about part one. Next week, we're going to talk about the sharing part. And then the next week after that, I'm going to do an example. So again, just like I did before, if you would like to practice this, and I would start really, really simple. So either with a spouse or maybe with a couple friends, just start, say, introduce like, hey, I'm watching this podcast and you can come watch it too. But this is what, Bethany is encouraging us to do. So I'm kind of curious about it. You guys want to try it? Fine. So start out, just have a couple small little experiences and then see where it goes. And then you can watch my actual example video here in a couple weeks. And the reason I do that again is because I think so many people are so concerned about getting it, quote, right. They don't really try, and they use that example as the only way. And that's not the only way. And so it's really hard to talk about this a lot of times because there really is so many different ways, so many different experiences God can do through this. And so it's just a starting point. But that is why I often, when I introduce this, I don't start with an example. Now, when you're in my groups, we experience first and then we label second. So that's a completely different way than we're doing it on here. But I don't have a group run in front of me, so we have to do it this way. So come experience a group. I know that was selfish advertising. But anyways, just putting that out there. So with this being said, I want you to pretend like you're with a couple friends right now and you're introducing this to them and they're like, yeah, sure, let's give it a whirl. What do we do? Right? And you're like, well, get in a comfortable place and make sure that you can really focus on us in this group. And this is a safe place. We've already done some, bonding together. And so we're just going to practice this. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take a deep breath together. Again, helping us getting out of our amygdala. You don't have to tell them that, but that's what you're doing. You're helping everybody. And I even do a couple different before I start. So a couple deep breaths before I start. And I'm go, okay. So God, can you bring to our minds a moment within the last week, within the last 2 weeks, where we got to really experience being with you in maybe a new way? Keeping in mind, it could be as simple as drinking a cup of coffee, to stepping into the backyard with bare feet, to seeing the sunrise or the sunset, to looking our kids in the eyes, to playing with the dog in the backyard, to watching a TV show. And then you get silent. And you say, God, we're just going to give you some time to just bring that moment to our mind and let us receive it. And sometimes I even encourage people to open their hands like this, like they're receiving. And sometimes I even go, now, if something comes in your mind and you don't see it as an amazing moment, take a minute and question, God, is that from you? And if it is, if he says there's something really good in there for you, then don't necessarily push it away. Welcome it closer and let's get curious together. Now, when you're guiding people through this, you start from the top of the head and kind of work down. That's an easy way of doing it. And a lot of times when I'm guiding people through it, I'm having my own too. That takes a lot of practice. When I started leading groups through this, oh my goodness, I could not have my own appreciation moment and lead them through. So literally as they were talking, I was asking God to bring the moment, of mine, or I would come in already with an appreciation moment. But it can be done. I'm letting you know it can now be done. And I can do that because a lot of times when you're leading this for the first time, you want to be able to share. As an example, you want to be the first sharer of the story. And so as you're doing this, I go, okay, starting from the top of my head and working my way down. Okay, God, what did I see in that moment? Was I inside? Was I outside? Yeah, sometimes I even turn my head around. What did I see in that moment? Did I see faces? Did I see steam going off this amazing dinner that was being made? Did I see my spouse in front of me, my kids in front of me? What did I see in that moment? And then again, allow myself to be quiet and allow them time to process. And it's gonna feel weird at first. Can we all just admit that? We stink at being quiet. So it's going to feel weird at first. So if you want to even count in your head 15, 20 seconds, I mean, that's bare minimum. But as you're walking this through, you want to give them time to process. You want to give yourself time to process. And then you go down. Now, sometimes people say ears are higher than eyes. I'm not going to get into that. I always start with the eyes first because that's easy. Then I go to the ears. So, okay, God, what did I hear in that moment? Even silence is a sound. That's an important realization. Even silence is a sound. Was I hearing my own heartbeat? Was I hearing my breathing? Was I hearing the sound and music around me? Was I hearing laughter? God help bring back to my mind what I was hearing at that moment. And then God bring to mind, God, what was I smelling in that moment? So I'm going down. What was I smelling in that moment? Keeping in mind, even smelling your own breath is a smell. And keeping in mind, it doesn't always have to be a good smell. Teenage boys is what I smell most of my time with my 3 kids. Not exactly the best smell, y'all, but it still brings me back to that moment. Because a lot of appreciation moments are with my kids. And then what did I taste? And sometimes I even go to what was my mouth doing? Was it open? Was it shut? Was it dry? Did I just take a drink of water? Was there flavors going through my mouth? And again, you're not asking for great detail, you're just asking them to connect with it. And then I can go down. God, what was my body doing? Was I sitting? Was I standing? Was I jumping up and down? Was I sitting and feeling the weight of my chair underneath me? And then going deeper, deeper inside still. God, what was I feeling inside at that moment? Now, I explain this in so many different ways because this is where things kind of get weird for some people, especially if we're not used to connecting with our emotions, right? So this can feel weird, but if you read the Psalms, you know that emotions are very much part of the Bible and very much part of our connection with God. And so, God, what did I feel in that moment? Was it exciting like a ball going off inside of me? Was it hard to even catch my breath? Were my shoulders tight? Were they loose? Were my hands flapping around everywhere because I was so excited? But did it feel like a fire coming up in me? Did it feel calm like a cool wind? God, what was I feeling inside at that moment? All you have to say. You don't have to label it happiness or regret or, well, hopefully you won't be feeling regret and appreciation moment, but you don't have to have them label it. Just pay attention to what it felt like inside their body. Now there's different deeper ways you can take it, but that's all you have to do right here for this one. And just allow them to sit with that moment. And then at the very end, I usually say, can Jesus give you a 3-word title for this moment that you and him got to have together? And they can put that in writing. There's so many different ways of doing it. Sometimes I say, hey, if Jesus was with you in that moment and you were to take a selfie with your phone, what would you call that? You can even go deeper. Where was he in that picture? What did he say to you? I mean, there's so many things that you can see. This is just the tip of the iceberg here. And then how I bring people out of it, I'm like, let's take a couple more deep breaths together, saying the words that Jesus gave you for that picture underneath your breath. Thank him for that. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and come back to our time together, or come back to the group, however you want to do that. And people ask me, if I'm doing this online, do I have everybody leave their cameras on? Yeah, I do. Eventually, in many of my groups, we can turn our cameras off and our voices off because they don't need me to help guide them through it. That they've done it enough times that they can do it their own way and do it. God is showing them how to process it. And so that is the actual experience. So you can see I'm already like calm myself just doing this and sharing this with you guys. So you guys could see how calming it is, how refreshing it is. And so hopefully you left maybe even with a new practice. You can also see the comparison to a manual journaling, because we very much do the experience almost in the same way. But when you're doing it in person and you're processing in person, you can go a little deeper sometimes because you have that person leading you. So that's where the interaction is happening. I hope this helped you. I hope this gave you some great insight. Again, if you're practicing in this and you're like, I would love some community, I would make, I want to connect with Bethany. I want to connect with other people that are doing this. Join our free community. That's why we're here. We love to help you connect, build applications, build resources, and definitely encourage you to dare to do more than step out and thrive, but also thrive with purpose in your calling. I hope you guys have a great week. Look forward to seeing you guys next week. Bye.